Collective. And today we have a very interesting show here with our astrologer and teacher and Akashic record reader and Reiki master, Miss Colleen Lemma. She is coming to us from South Carolina, and I am so excited for today. A very, very cosmic Saturday. So basically, we're going to be talking about astrology. And what I like about this topic is that usually when we talk about astrology in the general sense, it's always about, okay, well, you know what your sign and you do a chart here and there, and that's fine. But I think that what's interesting about what we're going to be talking about today is how you can actually use astrology as a tool to better empower yourself and as a guide for life. And I think that's the sort of thing that we don't get in the run of the mill type of predictions that they just sort of tell you what's sort of like a snapshot of what's going on in the sky and the clouds and obviously it's going to be a bit more sort of general because we're not doing your own personal chart, but you can actually contact Colleen Lemma, and she's giving us a nice discount on a reading, I think, right, for our members. So you can definitely get in contact with Colleen and you can speak to her about your chart and you can send her information and then she can work with you to do your own life blueprint. So I'm really excited about today, and just wanted to just say thank you everybody for coming today for our weekend special. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the content we're bringing you. It really helps the channel, so please like and subscribe, especially if you're new. If you're coming in, help us out to make this the best channel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss Colleen Lemma. Colleen, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you for having me on your show. And thank you to all of your audience
There's an
who's here
echo.
today. I'm really excited to speak with you all
There's an echo.
about astrology or whatever else comes up.
That's great. So, can you give us a little bit more of a background as to, because I gave everybody sort of a very, very quick background, but tell us a little bit more about about yourself, how you became who you are, and what were some of the experiences that led you to got down this path?
Well, it's a pretty interesting story. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, but I was born and raised in the UP of
There's an
Michigan, the
echo.
Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And, I was born into actually a Catholic family. So, astrology was a big no-no.
Mm.
All the things that I do now, a big no-no. But fast forward in my growing up years, when I got to the age of around, I'm going to say late 20s, 28, 29. I just felt like, and nothing against any organized religion per se, but Catholicism just didn't work for me. It wasn't fitting for me. So I kind of went on a spiritual journey, and hence I didn't know, but I was in what's called my Saturn return.
Mm.
Everybody has what's called a Saturn return time period around the age of 29, 30. And this is a time where there's big shifts that can really
Oh.
happen in your life. Sometimes the big shifts are getting a job for the first time, having a baby for the first time, getting divorced, going through a death. And so my Saturn return was losing my job, which I'll speak very briefly on in a minute, losing my where I lived, and losing my fiance. It wasn't as bad as it sounds. It wasn't like he passed away. He actually turned around and married somebody else without my
Shitty return.
Yeah, that was my Saturn return. So anyway, I ended up kind of shifting my path and moving, down to the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, the capital, Lansing. This is where my spiritual path, my metaphysical training actually begun. I met a lot of people, a community of people there where I just felt like that was home to me. They were very open. It didn't matter what your beliefs were as far as, different kind of religious or philosophical kind of belief systems. They were just open to everybody. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. And, so I ended up doing a lot of training, taking a lot of classes, doing a lot of training. The very first thing I did, I think it was 1997 or 1998, I became an ordained minister in the Order of Melchizedek.
Oh.
From there, I trained in an astrology school. for several years. There was a school there in Lansing, Michigan that I went through and graduated their levels and became one of their instructors, and then was on the board of their, astrology program for a little while. I learned numerology, I learned about crystals, I learned about, past lives, essential oils, you name it. I, learned a little bit about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a point where I actually went to a different school, and this was to become a certified hypnotherapist. And in this particular hypnotherapy course, we learned not only hypnosis, but we also learned how to do past life regression. We also learned how to do the healing technique Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian healing
Mm-hmm.
technique. We learned how to clear and remove entities and energies and cords and things like that. So this was a very special hypnotherapy course. And, so for the past 25 years, kind of fast forward to the present moment, also learning Akashic Records in there a couple, 2, 3 years ago. But yeah, I've been doing my spiritual work, which is one-on-one sessions with clients all over the world. I do a lot of healing sessions as well, Reiki, hypnotherapy, past life regression, and I also teach a lot of different classes on a lot of different metaphysical topics and subjects. And, just to kind of back up briefly, so you have a background of before I was redirected on my spiritual path. I call it my past life in this life.
Mm-hmm.
And, what I was trained in previous to learning all of what I do now, I went to a university and I was trained in social work, psychology, human services, substance abuse counseling. And I worked at 2 different domestic violence shelters, helping the women and children that went through domestic violence situations, on call with the hospitals, working with the police. Also worked for a while after that in disabilities, helping people start support groups and things of that nature. So, I was able to use that previous, knowledge from
Mm-hmm.
university and transfer it to what I'm doing now. Because really, when I do a reading, I'm a pretty grounded intuitive. We think of psychics and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and some psychics are able to like just pull little flashes of pictures through. I'm more of this grounded, practical, pragmatic. How can I help you to empower yourself? How can
Mm.
I help you to awaken your gifts, talents, and abilities? How can I assist you, with whatever area of life you're dealing with, relationships, finances,
Mm-hmm.
career, and what have you.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about me. It might have taken a little longer than
No, no,
than
no, not at all. Not at all. But you know what though? It's funny because I'm listening to what you're saying, and as a part of me, it's funny because my mother was a social worker. God bless her
Mm,
soul. And she was a social worker with youth protection, and I know, and she also had a background in astrology and tarot reading and all that kind of stuff. That's where I got a lot of my own gifts from as well. But I remember many times my mother would come home and say, she would do the to the children. And she would sort of see, what kind of family to put them with and what would be best for them, that kind of thing. And it's funny because I hear you talking about how you worked with the police and all that. And I find that right now, the police are often saying that what people need are not the police, they need a social worker. But what I'm hearing when you're talking, I'm saying, and especially it sort of ties in with what we're talking about today, is that it would be nice if we were in a society where because there's never going to be a perfect society, but it'd be nice to have a social worker who would be there with an understanding of your background and your chart and understanding, okay, this is maybe the reason why you're in a bit of a in a in a doing a lot of substance, or this is the kind of you lost your father and this is how it would affect you because you're a Pisces rising or you have a Mars in Scorpio or whatever, that kind of thing. And it would be helpful if people had that, because I think that it's that having that extra information that the police don't have. And to be honest, I think the police should have that. Personally, I think the police should be able to look and see like person's rap sheet, but also see what's happening in their chart to see, okay, this is the kind of program they need, this is the kind of work they need, or maybe this person really doesn't need to go into jail, that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
it would be nice to sort of have that society, and I think it's because when like especially what my mother was working with, when you know what's happening with the person's chart, you can then point at that point say, okay, maybe this child needs to go here or that sort of thing, you know, and it would just really help. I think a lot of people are lost, especially now, because a lot of people are going through, yes, and there's a Saturn's return, and I think we have somebody going through a Saturn's return. I think we have Angel Axios who's going through her own Saturn's return, as she says. But I think also what's happening now, as you know, is that the planet is going through so much cosmic changes, and it's affecting a lot of people, and people are starting to have their own sort of opening. They're, you know, working on their shadow self, all that kind of stuff. And it just seems that people don't really have that blueprint to turn on and say, yeah, you know, this is what I need to do, that sort of thing. So because people are familiar with astrology, what, about the topic for today, how is astrology in this context? How can people use it for their ability to sort of, you know, find their
Hmm.
path, that sort of thing, or to deal with what they're
Absolutely.
going through, you know, that kind of thing. I mean,
Absolutely.
that jerk that married another girl, what the hell, man?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
trying to
that
keep
was
my
a
language
shocker.
clean on the show.
That was quite the shocker. I'm
Yeah.
like calling his mother saying, "What's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, honey." And I thought he was like, she was going to say he died or something because he was in the service, right? So I didn't
Okay.
have access to talk to him all the time. And so I called his mother and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then she has this long pause and I'm like, and she said, "He got married." I was
Like
like,
what?
"What?" Yeah. So great Saturn return. But with what we're talking about today, and how can that help people? I actually developed a series of courses called Astrology for Self-Discovery. And that's really what we're talking about today is your astrological chart as your blueprint, the blueprint of the soul. This is about self-discovery. And sure, we can use it in relationship matters. We can use it in work or career matters. We can use it for health. Every sign of the zodiac rules a different part of the physical body. And so because it rules the different parts of the physical body, whatever sign of the zodiac you are, we can know, oh, how is that, what part of my health and well-being do I have to focus on in this life and take extra better care of? But this is about discovering who you are, right? This is about empowering yourself and getting in touch with, yes, your karma, and yes, your dharma, and your gifts and talents, and what your lessons are. Astrology kind of covers the whole gamut. When it comes to the signs of the zodiac, the planets of the zodiac, the houses in a zodiac chart, they rule different areas of our lives. They rule different things. They support us in different ways. And this is all about what your blueprint is. You can think about your date, time, and place of birth. And if you don't know your time, it's okay. We can still, do an astrology chart for you. But it's more accurate if you have your time of birth. But it's like a snapshot of the cosmos at the time you were born. And that snapshot of the cosmos, and given the location on the planet that you were born, gives you this unique blueprint that if you learn about, if you can understand even the basics of it, we're not suggesting you all have to become professional astrologers
Yeah.
because there is a lot to astrology. But if you can at least understand your sun sign, your moon sign, and your ascendant sign, those are the big three. If you can maybe know which signs of the zodiac relate to what elements, because the elements can tell us a lot right there. Like, for instance, I'm a Libra. Libra is an air sign. That's all about the intellect and communication. So right there, we know that people that are Libras, even though they're unique and they have other things going on in their individual chart from other Libras, they still probably are very focused on intelligence and the intellect and ideas and thoughts, and especially, again, communication.
Mm-hmm.
So those elements, and there's four elements with three signs of the zodiac in each element, but that can tell us a lot about a person too. So you can just learn the very basics. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
Crystal, I mean, yes, with the police, what about in hospital
Yeah.
or medical settings? What about in school settings? And it's not that we're trying to push everybody to believe in something that maybe
Mm-hmm.
they don't believe in. That's
Mm-hmm.
not it. And this is not a religion. So there's nothing religious about
Mm-hmm.
astrology. It's
Yeah.
just a tool,
Mm-hmm.
just like we have so many tools that help us. And I'm not saying just about the metaphysical, spiritual tools like tarot cards and numerology and astrology, but we have a lot of other gifts and talents at our disposal that are tools to with to help us. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't it be nice if teachers had that aspect as well? Because you see, and again, I just want to sort of back up a bit because we are moving from a very patriarchal Victorian, because that the education system, it's funny, there's a book out there now that's about how the basic education system is dumbing us down. We're not being taught how to think. We're not being taught how to sort of really open up to different things. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're anybody who is, let's say, Gen X or older, we've come through that last dregs of that Victorian, very, very patriarchal type of education system. And what's happening now is a lot of younger, people that are parents now who have children, they're starting to put them into alternative schools. Because where I work, I have a lot of women that are mothers and they're parents, and they're giving their children a very, very, very different education. And I'm not saying that everybody's sort of pushing astrology, but astrology is a tool because a teacher could maybe understand, okay, this, if this kid's a Libra as opposed to a Pisces, you know, the Pisces would probably do a lot better in certain types of field, or they have a certain kind of, way their head is, that sort of thing. And I think that people are learning how to just let their kids' own personal natural talents come through and not trying to force us down this sort of like, we're all round, sphere being forced on this sort of square peg. And it's sort of, it's a different time right now. But so we're all sort of coming out of that and we're all sort of shifting. So, I would say that if we were to come back in 10 years, we would see a very, very different education system. I think we'd see a very, very different have a medical system, because there is a thing called medical astrology.
Yes,
And
there
medical
is.
astrology can help you to, there are certain people that do have, certain shape or certain, aspects of their body. And, there's certain things that might be, like you said, it's not 100%, it's not black and white, but there are certain things that are much more prone. So I'd say that in 10 years, if we come back again, we would have a very different conversation, because I think that we're opening up, and like I keep saying, like a robot on the show, that in the next 2 years we are going to be seeing a lot of shifting going on the planet. So I think it's just a matter of time. I think we're just at
Absolutely.
the beginning of it, and it'll be a point where,
Right.
for example, in schools they'll say, oh, there's that thing in schools where they say, okay, what do you want to do, and they sort of give you a list of things to do. I think they should take down your chart and say, you know what, I think you'd actually
Absolutely.
be so and so. What do you think?
Because there's so many different learning styles, right? And
Yeah.
going back to the whole education in school, all of the fire signs, which would be Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, they're visionaries. They're quick. They're like
Mm-hmm.
quick and visionary types of thinkers and very visual.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got, the water signs, which are more feelers, like Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. They're not going to be that kind of quick,
Mm-hmm.
thinking kind of energy. They're going to be more of this, and not even a slow thinker per se, but just a feeler. They feel if something's right. They feel if something's off. The earth signs are the practical ones. They
Yeah.
might take a little longer to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
So the learning style is different for
It's very
earth. And then, of
different.
course, you've got air, which is, the intellectuals.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as much into the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but they're about processing and coming up with solutions and
Okay.
workarounds. So, that could be very helpful for teachers, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're I have here Angel saying she's a Libra Scorpio cusp. I guess you're sort of like you're coming in air and coming and feeling and all that kind of stuff. So like, I mean, it's Scorpios. It's an interesting mix. That sort of. So what is the first step now in 'cause- and actually I'd like you to talk about your course, because I think your course would be kind of interesting, because it seems that if you take this course, people would have the tools themselves to work with it. I mean, I'd obviously be a guide as a teacher, but what is it about
Right.
this course that helps people exactly?
Well, because I went through the Academy of Astrology, later called the Learning Center for Astrological Studies, many, many years ago, I learned all those different levels, if you will, of astrology. And so I was able to then take that information and create this course. And I think the thing about this course is it's not just one 2 hour like workshop. You're not going to learn astrology in one 2 hour
No.
workshop. My courses, each level or each class, I should say, like astrology level 1 is 8 2-hour classes, astrology level 2, 8 2-hour classes, and so on and so forth. Each
Yeah.
level has 16 hours basically of information and handouts that are given via email, live instruction for every class because we're on Zoom. So you can ask questions in real time. You get a copy, of the recording afterwards, so you can go back, take more notes and whatnot. What's helpful is that how I teach it is I go about it step by step by step, not to overwhelm. We don't want to try to teach you everything about planets, signs, houses of the zodiac, in 2 or 4 hours, because then you'd get so overwhelmed that you probably wouldn't do it, right? Unless you had a very natural inclination, you'd probably say, this is way too much. But each class, we're focusing on the next step, and the first steps are looking at, like your sun sign, and the sun is your personality and how you project yourself out to the world, who you are, how people see you, how you shine your light, because it's the sun. The
Yeah.
sun sign is how you shine your light. The moon sign is your emotions, your feelings. It's about your subconscious triggers. And so the moon sign, not everybody in your life maybe sees that energy,
Ooh, here we
but
go.
those that are closest to you. And again, this is about your feelings and emotions. And so it tells you a lot about that aspect of your personality. And then, of course, that third thing, the ascendant sign, that also, that's almost like the mask that we wear sometimes. We're wearing kind of this mask when we're first meeting people. So they don't necessarily see these different aspects of ourselves, but they're seeing that ascendant sign. And it's a part of the physicality of our being too, because it does describe a lot about the physical body, and therefore it can connect to our health as well. So, again, taking things just very step by step. The first 8 2-hour classes focuses on just the basics. The second set of classes focuses on just the houses of the zodiac and what each house stands for. Like one is about relationships, one is about finances, one is about career. There's 12 houses. That third set of 8 2-hour classes is focusing on just the planets a little bit deeper. So we go step by step, deeper and deeper for a better and better understanding.
Okay, so that's great. So I think one of the things, let's sort of look at different aspects, shall we? So when we talk about astrology being used for your purpose, and I think that's a big thing for people because, a lot of people say, yeah, well, I'm a Sag, which I am. And,
No, you're kidding me, right?
I know. But I think a lot of people, as we were talking about at the beginning of the show, a lot of people feel lost. Okay. And there's a lot of things that people can do and get purpose, but and we can't go into everybody's sign, obviously, this because you have to look at someone's chart. Even if we looked at, okay, well, for Pisces, yeah, but there's so many different aspects, especially if you know your rising and your moon, your Mars, all that kind of stuff. There's so many different things, but I think maybe what I'm asking is what are some of the tools that you can use to find your purpose, and just sort of like really basic, like, okay, if I look at my sun sign, it'll give me this type of tool, but maybe my purpose could be, and then how does my Mars affect that, because I'm a Sag, but I have Mars in Pisces, and I also have Moon in Scorpio, so I have a lot of water.
Yeah.
And in my chart, and a lot of that's going to be affecting. And so I was very artistic as a child growing up. I didn't really learn as quick. I was more feeling, all that kind of stuff. So even though I had a lot of fire, there was also that undercurrent, no pun intended, but there was that undercurrent of the water. And so I think if I had known that, and I think I would have had a very different approach to what my purpose could have been. So maybe we can talk about some of those little, like you were talking about some of the main core things. What does each core give to finding your purpose? If I'm making any sense, I'm trying to articulate.
I don't know. I don't know if you're making any sense to me, but maybe to somebody else. Can I maybe give a little quick thing about
Sure.
each sign of zodiac?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so first, before I do that, I want to say that when it comes to the career path, your life path, your destiny path, who you are out in the world, how you express that part of yourself out to the world. Yes, the sun sign, I mean, that's just the main core of who you are, but really we're needing to look at what's called the midheaven, the 10th house cusp, the top of the chart, because that is who you are out in the world. And that tells us about special gifts that you might have as far as career. So we do look at different things like you said. It's not just one thing.
Okay.
But your core essence, for instance, you said you were a Sagittarius, but you had a Scorpio moon and did you say Pisces
Yeah,
ascendant?
Mars Pisces. Mars and Pisces.
Mars and Pisces. Well, I mean, again, the thing that pops out for me for you is that Sagittarius is what we call mutable, a mutable sign, which is changeable and it's all over the place. So as a Sagittarius, if we thought what would her career path be about? First, we'd want to look at what are keywords for Sagittarius. They are the sharer of information. Well, look what you're doing here. You're the
Exactly.
sharer of information, right? And you're expanding that effort throughout all the world because that's one of the key phrases for Sagittarius is expansion. So you're doing it. But the thing is with Sag is that they can go here, they can go there, they can do this, they can do that. They're changeable, right? They're mutable. And your Pisces energy, Mars, which is how we move forward, your Mars being in Pisces, Pisces is also mutable. So my question to you would be, in your earlier years, if not now, have you often like maybe started something but then got redirected
Yeah,
or lost
absolutely.
focus or?
And I have a Pisces rising, so that's a worse for Pisces. Not Pisces. I'm sorry, I have an Aries rising, so Aries
Oh,
doesn't always finish what they start. But you know what though? What I realize is that if I'm very driven by something, like if something is really really driving me, I will
yeah,
complete it. And this is something, for example, putting together this podcast was something that I really really wanted to
yeah.
do, and I drove me. And also studying in film, I really really was into that, so that drove me. But if it's just sort of like a little thing here and there, no, like I'm horrible for that.
Oh,
Aries are horrible for that.
well, let me go back and give that little snippet for each sign really
Okay.
quick. Aries makes great leaders. They're entrepreneurial. They don't want to work for other people. They want to be kind of in charge and be the boss. Tauruses are builders. They're practical. They're grounded. Um, they are kind of like the stability in the rock. So they'd actually be good working with earth materials like builders or pottery or artists of some sort working with materials. Gemini is one of those air signs. And so it's all about the thought, ideas, intellect, learning a little bit about a lot of things, teaching it or sharing that information with other people. So they'd make great teachers, for instance, or writers, writing books and things like that. Again, these are very general, right? But Cancer rules home and family. They're the feelers, they're the mothers, they're the empathic ones. They make great healers and counselors, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Leo, we're back to fire like Aries. So leaders, but they're really good with creative self-expression. So any form of creativity with Leo, and they want to have fun with what they do. So whatever their career is, if they're not having fun,
Yeah.
they should look at something else. Virgos are very detail oriented people. They actually make great healers in the sense of practical healers, like nurses, doctors, chiropractors, herbalists, things of that nature. They're also teachers in a sense. They're service oriented. So whatever like social work, teacher, those kind of service oriented jobs are good for Virgo. Libras. Libras like to work with other people. And then, I mean, if you have a job, I mean, you're not necessarily, going to work one on one with just one other person, but they're kind of like collaborators. So some sort of a job where they can collaborate, some sort of a job where there's communication involved, and it needs to be harmonious, balanced, equality types of communication. That's where they're going to do best. They can also be great with like interior design and color, and they're artistic as well. Scorpios are the researchers of the zodiac. So they're great with like things like counseling and hypnosis and therapy and the metaphysical realm and healing, all kinds of like Reiki or any kind of healing work with energy. But also researchers. And the other side of that coin for Scorpios, they like to work with other people's money. So you might often find them in business, in some sort of business capacity. Sagittarius, we kind of mentioned because you're a
Mm-hmm.
Sagittarius. They are great as being the visionary, the teacher, the one that connects with people all around the world. They like to work with people from different countries and cultures. And what else can I say about them? They have their own sense of, oh, what do I want to say? They would be good as a leader too because they're fire, but again, they're kind of changeable and mutable.
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn is the serious, down to earth, practical business kind of person. They like to be also in charge of their career. They make great managers and supervisors, and again, in entrepreneurial positions. They often work in places like government and institutions and things like that. It's a little more third dimensional than some of the other signs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got two more signs. We've got Aquarius. Aquarius is the humanitarian. How can I help the collective? They're better at group energies than they are one-on-one. But they're here as, what can we do to help the collective move into the future timeline?
Yeah.
So anything that deals with that and being a humanitarian. And then, of course, Pisces, creative, artistic, flowing, psychic, intuitive Pisces, but they're also kind of mutable and changeable. They're kind of like a chameleon. They can
Mm-hmm.
sort of like merge and meld into whatever they need to. But they're definitely going to do best at career paths that involve some sort of artistic, creative, flowing, non-traditional, kind of
Mm-hmm.
energy and film too. Like
Yeah.
you think of Hollywood and you think, of Pisces.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's that.
I'm sorry. I was trying to sort of like, I was trying to sort of figure out what I was going to ask, and I think I just sort of went off on a tangent there. So I apologize for that.
That's
So-
okay.
but so here's an interesting thing. So we've gone through the whole zodiac wheel, and we've talked about the different signs and what some of their better qualities are. Now, when people are talking about how we're moving from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aquarius, and how Aquarius will affect people. Will that affect also? Will that affect how people engage in their supposed you know sign, like in terms of how they do their jobs or how their lives are going to be affected, because it seems to be a big shift. It's not just about, okay, this is my own sign. This is like a bigger shift happening on the planet. How
Mhm.
do you feel we're going to be affected by that? And the reason why I'm asking that is because that's going to affect how people engage with the world, how people, especially with all the technology that is coming up and everything. What does that mean moving forward for pretty much everybody?
We are in a very profound collective shift. And we have been for the last few years, but it's really ramped up from about the fall of 2024 and just, through these first 6 going on 7 months now of this year 2025. And the reason being is because a lot of the what we call slower moving planets that rule the collective have shifted signs, and they stay in signs anywhere from like 7 years, like Uranus stays in each sign of the zodiac for 7 years, up to Pluto, which could be anywhere from 12 to 20 years in one sign of the zodiac. So because those slower moving planets have shifted in the last 6, 7, 8 months, this is causing a huge shift on a collective level. And maybe, we've been in the age of Aquarius for quite some time. Maybe it's been more recent. Everybody has their opinions on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think we're immersed into the age of Aquarius by now, for sure,
Mm.
no matter how long we've been in it. So these shifting of these collective planets are changing how we think, how we perceive, how we act, what the vision needs to be in moving forward. And so, we've kind of transitioned from earth and water. This is kind
Mm-hmm.
of general with some
Mm-hmm.
of the planets, but earth and water, if you think about planting a seed in the earth and then watering it,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually slow growth,
Yeah.
right? And earth is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Earth is compacted, and
Yeah.
heavy. And water even has a substance of, it can be heavy. If you picked up a whole bowl of water, it would be heavy.
Yeah.
Now we're moving with these outer planets into fire and air. And what happens when you put fire and air together? Whoosh, it makes
Combustion.
a bigger fire,
Yeah.
right? So fire is the vision and air is the thought, the idea. And so now we're going to, as a collective, with these outer planets moving into fire and air signs, we're going to be moving a lot faster because fire and air is faster than earth and water. And again, we're going to be coming up with these new ways and ideas and a vision for our future. And hopefully, then we're going to be able to, with the appropriate people and their appropriate soul's blueprint, whatever, the soul blueprint might be for the individuals out there, help to manifest this new way for humanity. And that's going to look like changing education and changing healthcare and changing how we look at money. Money is just a tool, but people get very fearful, about money, and they don't think of money as an energy. He's like, oh, we have to have money. And yeah, sure, we want security. We need to pay our bills and whatnot. But if we can like shift our way of thinking about and perceiving money as it's just a tool and an energy, like my tarot, my tarot card
There you
here,
go.
is a tool, then we can, say, what, if I just envision, if I use my visionary capabilities, my third eye, and I see abundance and opportunities coming to me, however that might look for the individual, then we can magically manifest those resources that we might need because there's infinite abundance and prosperity in the universe. We just have to believe that, see that, understand that. And I think a lot of it is going to be not just shifting education in the form of, grade school, middle school, high school, university, but changing education of humanity to understand more of the spiritual concepts and have them expand their awareness to what their soul's truth really is, the gifts that they really have, the ability to co-create their reality, and then move into creating this new earth
Okay.
that we all want to live in.
Yeah. So one of the things that, especially when we're talking about a blueprint for life, we come into, well, a lot of us came into this world sort of thinking, okay, we're going to do this sort of thing with life, and we're going to have this sort of job and have this sort of lifestyle. And what's happening, especially when you talked about the sun and air coming together, that causes combustion, and also air feeds fire. So there's a lot of growth and expansion. So with that though, there's also a lot of AI coming in, and I think that a
Yes.
lot of people are feeling very fearful about that. And they're also feeling that, you also hear to see articles about how they say, well, AI is going to wipe out all these jobs, and it's going to wipe out the acting. Speaking of Hollywood, Hollywood is really changing. Hollywood is getting to the point now where you don't even have, I mean, you have a few movies and shows that actually build sets and do stuff like that, but actually a lot of it is just turning into CGI and everything. And so a lot of people are saying, how do I find my path? How do I find, what do I do in AI if everything's going to be taken? And so I think a lot of people say, well, what is my path at this point? Where do I go? What's my blueprint? You know?
I think we all as human beings have free will choice. And we also have soul encoded memories from other lifetimes, other timelines, other places. This whole thing with the AI exploding, and because Uranus just went into Gemini on July 7th for the
Exactly.
next 7 years, it's going to explode much
Yeah.
faster beyond what it has before than we can even imagine. But I think a lot of, I'm not saying all of it, because I do think the fear that is out there is it can be, it can have some accuracy to it. But I think a lot of what a lot of people are feeling are these memories from the Atlantean times, and we're not going to necessarily get into that because
No,
that's a
no,
whole
let's
other
get into it.
show. But the
No, no,
Atlantean
get into it.
times, where
We
you
can.
know where we misused
Yeah,
technology and
exactly.
destroyed ourselves in essence and then we're scattered all over the globe because of, earth changes and cataclysms and whatnot. I think there is this deep down in our cellular memory, this fear,
Yeah.
because it's like this repeating pattern
Mm-hmm.
now with AI and technology and everything else. Now, going back to free will choice, yes, this is happening. But can we use now our free will to make different decisions than we did back in the Atlantean times?
Mm-hmm.
Can we use this in such a way to create more jobs instead of deleting more jobs? We can come up as the visionary and use our intellect and our intuitive senses to figure out how can we use this in the best possible way to not hurt humanity and those people that are maybe trying to make a living, need their job, their income for their families and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we make it work in a better way? And maybe it's making things easier in some ways, and to not, to again shift the perspective and not fear it. Now, we've got, just like we did back in the Atlantean times, some people called it the sons of Belial versus the
Mm-hmm.
children of the law of one. So we've got people over here thinking this certain way, the light workers, let's
Mm-hmm.
call them. And then we've got these people over here that are very entrenched in the third dimensional reality and want to keep things the same. So, how do we maneuver that? That remains to be seen. Are
Mm-hmm.
we going to maneuver that with love? I mean, sure, we have to stand our ground. We have to set boundaries. We have to not let lower vibrational energies, you know, um, take things away from us or keep us restricted or limited or in a sense metaphorically imprison us.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need to be in the light, right? And that's a hard balance. We need to be in the light. We need to be in our heart chakras. We need to be in our authentic truths and emanate this unconditional love, this universal love, because that's what's really going to heal and change things.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, how do we do that? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and don't be afraid, because I mean we're here to talk about all that stuff about Atlantis, and Atlantis does in many ways reflect what we're going through right now, and I believe that wholeheartedly. And so this is the new Atlantis. With that in mind, we do have, I think, what, the white hats or the yellow hats, that we have a group of people that are all about the computer and the tech, and a lot of people are saying how AI could actually just sort of go off the guardrails, and they've found that AI has some from time to time been a bit on the dark side, as it were. And then by the same token, I think that people are also, like you said, the light workers. I think a lot of people are realizing that we do have that power. And I think that this is the big shift that's happened in this stage of humanity, is that we've been through this whole sort of darkness, this dark night of the soul, where we've had to work through a lot of darkness on this planet. And there's many reasons why. We have a lot of influences coming from different cosmic beings that are coming in here and causing some of this darkness. But at the same time, we have our own as a collective. I think I'm sort of channeling now, but I think as a collective, we have had to work through the darkness of humanity, through the darkness of the soul of humanity, and we're starting to finally come out of that. And I think that people are starting to say, you know what, we should treat other people equally. Whether it be through the civil rights movement, women should be treated equally. And now you're starting to see, and I'm not trying to get political, but like you see what's happening now with Palestinians and all the fighting and all that kind of stuff. People say, we need to treat people differently. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now that I can see for myself that it's going to be a bit different from what we experienced in Atlantis,
Hmm.
because we are realizing that we cannot let go of the light and of who we are. And people are saying, if you can be anything, be kind. And we have to treat animals differently and all that kind of stuff. So that sort of awakened awareness is starting to come to the forefront. And I think that when you talk about standing our ground, I think this is where people are going to stand their ground and say, you know what, I am not going to sit here and allow people to be hurt or allow animals to be hurt, which is a big thing for me because I love animals, and all that kind of stuff, because it's not right. And I think that we are finally at this point in humanity finding our heart. We're finding our heart center and saying we have to, irregardless of what my blueprint is, my soul blueprint, it's a big part of it. I think this is where the shift into Aquarius comes from, is that it's not just about me anymore. I mean, yes, to a certain degree, yes, I have to wake up tomorrow and, do my job, pay my bills. But I feel that we're looking more as the we instead of just the me. And I think that that's
Absolutely.
where that whole shift in Aquarius is coming from. So as much as we have the last bits of like, AI is coming, I know what we know, what are we going to do? I think there's also sort of a bigger sort of umbrella sort of opening up here and saying we as a collective have to work to have a more fair society, irregardless of the technology, because they can mean,
Hmm.
and speaking of Hollywood, every time you look at these big Hollywood movies like the Terminator 2s and all that kind of stuff, and it you have a lot of the technology that comes in, and Matrix and all that kind of stuff, and we end up as a humanity, conquering all of that and bringing
Hmm.
about a fair society, especially towards the end of the Matrix, the movie. You know,
Absolutely.
I don't know if you wanted to comment on that. I think I just sort of I went through
Well,
channeling there. Sorry.
no, no, that's wonderful. I love to listen to your channel, Crystal. What I'd like to go back though, I want to circle back around for a minute to the idea of people, that have fear around the AI and the technology growing too fast or being used in inappropriate ways. And remember, it's like psychic protection 101. If there's, if you fear negative, let's say entities, if you fear negative entities or negative energy of any kind, or fear certain people, let's say, you're lowering your vibration to a certain point where then it's more easily that you're attracting that kind of energy, whereas if you're in a high vibration state, you're not. So rather than fearing technology, let's hold it in the highest light, that it's going to be used for the highest good, and let's work on keeping ourselves in that highest vibration. With all of these planetary shifts we have going on, it's trying to strip away old karmic patterns, old, energies, old fears, old anxieties. If you're anything like me, in the last month, you've had waves of like anxiety and you're like,
Yeah.
what's that all about? Where's that coming from? Times where you can't sleep, or times where conversely you feel like you want to sleep for 10 hours. This is all part of the shift of us, on an individual level, that's stripping away some of the old stuff from old timelines, past lives, and old karma and whatnot, so we can raise our vibration, so that our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies can shift, and DNA can be activated, and we're able to receive downloads, in a better and utilize that in a better way. So let's not be in fear. Yes, let's pay attention, and let's use our mind, in the best possible way to figure out, how can we avoid a repeat of Atlantis here, and what new solutions can we come up with to, utilize this AI explosion in such a way that it's going to benefit humanity instead of fearing it and then drawing to us some of what we fear, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And also, I think that I remember my mother, because she was an astrologer as well, and I used to say, look at my chart because there's this, that, the other in it. And it's funny because she was away, I really ahead of her time in that sense. And she said, irregardless of what's happening in your chart, and I mean, even though you are going to get some influences from your chart for sure, but irregardless, you create your own reality. And I think one of the big things that we're learning now is that you can turn around and say, yes, I can. And I think it was the autobiography of a yogi in that book where he talks about, yes, depending on your sign, you may have some challenges that are a bit more slow moving, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you create your own reality. And I think that one of the biggest lessons that we're going through right now is that we are no longer, like I was saying at the beginning, at the opening of the show, is that we've been through this whole darkness and heaviness of the patriarchal society that says, no, you have to do it this way, and no, you have to, and we are coming out, and I think that's a part of the air aspect, is that we're sort of, finally coming out of that heaviness and being a lot lighter, and being able to say, no, I can actually do what I have to do, and you know,
And I'm a sovereign
and I'm a
being.
sovereign being. Absolutely. I'm a sovereign being, and I can, in my own sovereignty, do what I have to do while being a part of the collective as well. So with that in mind, would you say that you could then use what's in your chart to further accentuate who you are? Like, how can we start using these energies in that sense?
I'm first of all, I'm glad you brought up that we have free will, and
Mm-hmm.
just because we are born with a particular astrological blueprint doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean like, oh my God, I got this karma, it's set in stone, I'll never be able to get
Yeah.
out of it.
No.
No, it's like these are tendencies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so astrology again is not like a set in stone, this is going to happen. Sure, there's time periods where there's certain energies that are affecting you based on where the planets are
Mm-hmm.
now and how they're affecting your personal chart. But it's up to you with how you're going to use that and how it's going to unfold for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, Saturn is known as the teacher of karmic lessons, right? And actually, today, as we're doing this right now,
Yeah.
Saturn is making his turn to retrograde motion. So here we've got Saturn, Lord of Karma, teacher of karmic lessons, slowing down. That's where some of the heaviness right now is coming in
Mm-hmm.
from,
Is
the
Saturn in
cosmos.
which sign right now? What Saturn? What sign is
It's
Saturn in?
in it's at 1 degree of Aries, almost 2 degrees, but it's at
Okay.
1 degree of Aries. So it just recently, earlier this year, went into a new sign of the zodiac. It
Mm-hmm.
stays in a sign for 2.5 years. While about, like the last 2 to 3 years, it's been in Pisces. It's been clearing out a lot of old karma
Mm-hmm.
because Pisces kind of deals with the past lives and the
Yeah.
other dimensions and things like that. Now with Saturn being in Aries, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, the initiator, the leader. Let's plant a new seed. Let's do something new, which is why this is such an important time for
Mm-hmm.
humanity. And Saturn not only is about karmic lessons, but it's about bringing something into manifestation. It's about shape and form.
Mm-hmm.
So it's able to ground something new into our reality. And it actually is a blessing, although again, both different signs, different planets have the shadow side of themselves and the positive light side of themselves. But Saturn, as it's turning retrograde today, later today, tonight, tomorrow morning, it's joining Neptune, which just went retrograde on July 4th, the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
And Neptune it can be about illusion, delusion, and confusion,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also the ruler of the spiritual realm, oneness, um, evolution, inspiration, miracles, and things of that nature. So Neptune is also at 1 to 2 degrees of Aries and has turned retrograde. So Saturn and Neptune together, Neptune is the dreamer and Saturn is the manifester. If we can dream the new dream with Neptune, then we can manifest it should we choose to with
Okay.
Saturn. I know I just went off on a tangent because I don't know what the original question was, but that's where my mind just took me.
Yeah, no, no, but it's good though because I think that maybe often when that happens is because this is the answer that people really need to hear. But I'll just sort of take that and put it in a different direction though. So because we're coming into the collective, and one of the things that I've been seeing a lot with the different astrologers is that they're talking about, and again, it's not about politics on this show. It's just about some of the references and the influences that we're going through. These changes that are happening with these big planets like Saturn and Neptune, it's affecting the world and it's affecting where we're going. And in particular, it's affecting the United States because the United States does, let's be honest, have a certain influence on this planet. With these changes that are coming up, what is your take on some of the changes that we're going to be going through? The United States, but also in a very very brief format, but also in terms of the planet. What's happening now?
Well, I stay in the hopeful side of
Okay.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So, my hopes is that even though there's certain energies out there that seem very bleak, it sort of reminds me of the metaphor of someone, oh gosh, I don't know how to put this because I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
target any, particular group. But it's like we have to fall to the bottom of the hole
Mm-hmm.
before we can kind of lift ourselves
Yeah.
out of the hole, right? And so I feel like, this might be our whole.
Well,
And in
right.
that, what looks like bleakness and things like that, that maybe that's what it needs to be to motivate groups of people to come together, to make the changes that we all desire. Like we all want, certain changes. We all want to live, hopefully, at peace and with abundance and prosperity and happiness and joy in our lives. But a lot of us maybe are waiting for an authority or the powers that be to do it for us. And if we're sovereign beings and we need to come into our own sense of self and our own empowerment and our own, what do I want to say, authenticity of what we're here to do. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do the same thing to make something happen, but we're all here to be our individual selves and to put our best foot forward to kind of make the change that we're seeking to make, the changes that we wish to see. We can't be complacent, basically.
Yeah.
We can't wait for someone else to do it, because those organizations, those institutions, those politicians are not necessarily going to do it for us. So we have to be the change that we seek. And you're right, this is not a political show, and I'm not a political person at all. But when it comes to, coming back around to the personal, I'm trying to remember your original question that we kind of got off on a tangent from, is how can, oh, like these planetary energies, and we're talking a lot about the collective with them, they also affect you. Like Saturn, Neptune, and what we're talking about on a collective level, they're somewhere in your chart right now. All of the people that are watching this. So how is it affecting you personally? This is where looking at your astrological chart, your astrological blueprint comes in, because wherever Saturn and Neptune are, this is where you can manifest a new dream, or how you can manifest a new dream, depending on where it's at, what planets it's connecting to. Just like Uranus going into Gemini. So just briefly, Uranus is kind of the God mind. Uranus is future oriented. Uranus is freedom, liberation, change. It's about humanity and working together with people of like mind to make a change. With Uranus going into Gemini, it's sparking, with Gemini being the ruler of the mental realm, or one of the signs that rules the mental realm, it's sparking your intellect. It's sparking new ideas and new thoughts and new ways of looking at things, and new solutions that are coming in. So where is that in your chart? Right? Is Uranus and Gemini in your 10th house of career and life purpose? Or is it in your house of money, on how to create more like income and stable financial, experiences for yourself? Is it in the 5th house, which is your creative self-expression, which would mean if Uranus and Gemini is in your 5th house right now, it's going to really spark your creative self-expression. Like you're going to be writing and painting and dancing and singing, and any form of creativity is going to be on high right now. So, coming back around to your blueprint, this is one of the reasons why astrology is, to me, so important for self-discovery and moving forward. Each day on your soul path to not only understand yourself better, but to move forward in the best possible way at the best possible time, because astrology definitely can give us timing. Like I, did a couple of readings for people the other day, and I said, okay, this year is more about self-reflection and coming up with a plan and a strategy. But next year, business expansion,
Yeah.
'cause they're asking about business. Well, this year is the planning stages. So look to next year, for the implementation of the strategy that you're planning now. So that's, how astrology can be used, in some ways personally.
Yeah, and what's it just sort of to tie into what the question was in terms of what was happening in the world and in the U.S. and all that kind of stuff, but and you brought up a good point. You were saying that Saturn was out there sort of cleaning up some of the dregs and all the old karmic and all that kind of stuff, and all the stuff that we've had to sort of clear out. And excuse me. And I also feel that and I'm glad you brought up the idea that brought up the fact that Saturn is in retrograde, and Neptune I think is retrograde as well, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so because I sort of feel like there's something sort of like a holding pattern, like whoop, and we're sort of just not
Yes.
moving. I really feel that. And I feel, and maybe this is just my own personal opinion, but I feel that we're sort of like we're just holding our breath because, like you said, once things start moving forward, it's just going to be like, oh, this is going to start moving really quickly, especially with it going into Gemini, because Gemini rules intellect, but also rules all the AI and all the computers and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people have been saying that you're going to see, the royal we are going to see so many technical changes and
And
so
science
many
and technology and
science technologies
transportation
is going to
and
blow up.
transportation as well.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to blow up completely. And I'll give you a couple of my ideas that I've been able to channel. And some of the things that I see, and I'm already starting to see it. Like I've been starting to see little things like, certain like I'll read scientific articles, and I'll say, there might be a cure for diabetes. There might be a cure for different types of things. So I think we're going to see a ton of new, because we've been working on the stem cells, and been working on, like, decoding the human genome and all that kind of stuff. I think that all that work is finally going to start to culminate, and we're going to start to see a lot of cures for different diseases. Now, is there going to be a cure for cancer? I think so. I think we're going to start to see it may not be completely I mean, not magical in the sense that it can't be, because life can be magical, but I think we're going to see a lot of cures for a lot of different diseases that we thought were like, well, that's it, you're done. I think we're going to really sort of move forward with that. Another thing that I've been channeling, that I've been seeing, is that we're going to be, and a lot of people have seen this as well, and you can tell me what you think. Because of where some of the placements are in the current astrological setting, there is a possibility of contact with the galactics. And there's a lot of people talking about that, and not in a woo woo tinfoil hat, bullshit out of way. It's really going to be coming up where we're going to be really having this contact, because that's sort of where we're at. And at different points in history, when the settings have been in this particular way, the Europeans arrived in the New World, and stuff like that. So we seem to be in a certain element where we are going to be having this higher contacts, and people are also having more contacts with higher beings. People are channeling, more people are connected. And so I see that, and I think that if we do have this kind of contact, that's going to accelerate our idea of travel as well. Like, I mean, it may be far-fetched what I'm trying to say, but obviously, if you in contact with a higher, with beings that have a higher level of technology, well, we're no longer going to be in a part of our combustible engines. That's going to completely change, whether it be with the galactics or whether it be with what we're working on now, because there's a lot of different technologies right now where we're it's not just about the electrical car. We're going to be able to travel. I don't know, but if you
Yeah.
want to sort of,
I agree, and I believe that there's been moments in time in the past, in our past history, where the galactics have helped us further ourselves at a faster rate as well. The Egyptian times being one of them.
yeah,
So
and
I do
Atlantis.
feel like, and Atlantis. And I do feel like with like you said, the current planetary placements, Pluto is in early degrees of Aquarius, and Uranus now is in early degrees of Gemini. Those are very compatible. They're making a harmonious connection. And Uranus does rule again. It rules that God mind channeling kind of information, and Pluto rules evolution and death and rebirth. So I do feel like that definitely is coming. Yes, I feel like, like you said, more people are channeling. I'm sure there's people out there that the galactics have obviously already made
Yeah,
contact with because they're open to it. But I feel like we're going to, as a humanity, become more in the space of being open to it as disclosure happens, let's
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore they'll be able to come in more and more, however that might be,
Mm-hmm.
definitely through some sort of communication, because of the astrology
Gemini.
that Gemini, Gemini and Aquarius too.
Yeah.
I feel like that communication is a definite for sure. As to how it unfolds, I don't know. But what was the other thing I wanted to say? The technology, the healing that you were saying, the
Mm-hmm.
cures for this and cures for that. I think too, sure, there's going to be some scientific, practical, I guess you could say, or
Mm-hmm.
conventional maybe cures, but I also think there's going to be a lot of alternative healing
Mm-hmm.
expansion. I'm already seeing it. I actually am connected with a health and wellness center that deals with the energy enhancement system and a lot of these higher vibrational alternative therapies. And I think we're going to see how these alternative therapies can work for the healing of some of these dis-eases and whatnot as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So that also is going to be on the rise as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what's interesting is that while on the and I just want to sort of dovetail on what you're talking about in terms of the new center, and actually we have a presentation coming up in a couple of weeks about that. But one of the things that I find interesting is that there's a dichotomy in a sense because we're talking about excuse me about energy, about technology and AI and all that kind of stuff coming out, but by the same token, what's interesting is that we have a lot of people going back to ancient traditions, talking about, working with herbs. Yeah, we've had that. But like, I mean, really it's becoming a lot more people talking about sound therapy, people talking about, working with crystals and energetics. And even though we had that back in Atlantis and in Egypt and different times, we sort of lost our way with that, and we seem to be it seems to be is really just ratcheting up. It's just like us rolling up and we're like, but it's all about all these different alternative therapies which are coming back online because our own DNA is also coming back online. And I think there's also a certain amount of activation within our own so-called junk DNA, which is not junk, but rather DNA that has been suppressed and kept dormant. But that's also blowing up too. So we're going to be, I think, as a humanity, vibrating more in that direction. It doesn't mean that there's no space for medicine, like for modern medicine, but modern medicine is really behind. Like it's really really behind in many different ways, and I'm not gonna go down that path. But it's I think that humans are far exceeding what this world is being able to offer us right now. And
Hmm.
we one of the things that's changing is that we're breaking down a lot of these different foundations, and we're bringing in something new, which is a part of Aquarius, which is a part of opening up to that. So in some ways, I guess I answered my own question because on the one hand, people are talking about, well, we need to sort of go back to things, but I think we're going back to some of that. But at the same time, for example, people are leaving the patriarchal religions and are going back to Gaia, going back to Wicca, going back to different types of earth based spiritual movements, which I think is big because Wicca and that all that is
Paganism.
Wicca,
Hmm.
paganism that is growing by leaps and bounds. Did you want to comment on that? What's happening with that? Why is that growing by leaps and bounds?
I think it's the rise of the divine feminine.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like the we've been in this patriarchal
Mm-hmm.
energy, and there's nothing wrong with the divine masculine energy. We
No.
all have a masculine and a feminine. We need a balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because the feminine has been suppressed for so long, or
Yeah,
abused, or mismanaged for so long, or in some of us shut off, so to speak.
yeah.
So now this patriarchal society that we've lived in is crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
It's crumbling before our eyes,
Exactly.
and it's the rising up of the divine feminine again,
Mm-hmm.
which has historically been the seers and the herbalists and the energy workers and the
Exactly.
intuitives, the seers, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think it's definitely about that rising of the goddess. I've seen a lot of lately too, in the last couple of months, a lot of groups popping up with like divine wisdom groups or
Mm-hmm.
women wisdom groups, things of that nature, where women are coming together to support one another. But I feel like there's a underlying other, advantage to that, because as we come together as powerful women and we awaken our truth and come back into our divine feminine, we're better able then to, put that out there in the world, bring healing to the world, or bring in new ideas for the world that are needed. But we do need the divine masculine, and I mean
Absolutely.
divine masculine, to be able to implement it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, it can be the divine masculine and the divine feminine within yourself, right? Because you have both. So
Exactly.
you can come up with that intuitive hit, if you will, of what needs to happen, and then use your masculine side to, like,
Mm-hmm.
initiate it and bring it into some sort of manifestation. I don't know if that answered your question.
Absolutely, it does. It does absolutely answer my question. And the thing is that, and I've often said it in the show again and again, that it's not about man bad, women good.
No, no.
That's not it at all. No, and men, I think, also are realizing, because men, I think, have actually been challenged in that direction, in that way, because they've been told that you cannot have emotions and you cannot be in touch with your higher self. No, stop it. And I think that it's been very difficult for them, because they've wanted to, because they also feel the pull. They're on this planet too, like the rest of us. They feel the pull, but they're being told by this society, which is crumbling, that you can't do that. And I think that we're at a time now where we've had a very big schism between male and masculine and feminine. And at the risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, I feel that some of that has also been artificially implanted. They're trying to keep the masculine and the feminine. They're trying to keep the relation between men and women. It's not just about relational or sexual or all that, but it's about the connection between the masculine and the feminine. They've tried to keep that away, because they've tried to use that as control, you know, and
Yeah.
the powers that be, or however you want to call it, are realizing that they're losing that control, because it is crumbling. It is, and it's like you said, it's crumbling before our eyes, and it's scary, because they're sort of like, what am I? What's happening? But it's also the same way of saying, okay, well, it's crumbling, but I'm going to be safe. You know what I mean? And I think that men are also going to sort of be able to sort of feel that they can be open to be able to connect with their divine feminine while still being men. It doesn't mean being fifi. It just means this, coming online with both sides in balance. And so I think men are going to really benefit from that. I know women are definitely benefiting from it, and I know that there's some, naysayers and women. But like, I mean, it's definitely coming online, and we're seeing more of it. I think that speaking of the crumbling, though, if I could sort of take this in another direction, is that the crumbling is also to a certain degree of karma as well, because you cannot go through all this nightmare and everything that's been going on and not have some karma be a part of it. And so when I see what's happening in the world, as much as it's scary, I'm also saying, well, that's also karma too, because like, I mean, you know better. You know what I mean? So you know better than to treat animals this way. You know better than to take away women's rights and all that kind of stuff, reproduction and all that kind of thing. I mean, you know better. And so men who support women are coming up and saying, we support our women and we support who we are, and we're breaking down those systems. But it's also, when we're talking about illusion, it's also the media that's also the illusion. That's the part of the illusion that is giving us this illusion that it's all hell and it's all going to break loose, when really it's just sort of quietly crumbling down. So would you
I
say,
think I think the fear,
you
the
know
power and control, some of that, I mean, not some of that, I mean, really all of that, the
yeah,
fear, power and control and whatnot, the misuse of power, the hurting of other humans and animals. It's really, it goes to me to a disconnect. It's a disconnect between you and your true essence. You're disconnected from your higher self. You feel disconnected from source. You're never really disconnected from your
no,
higher self. You're never really disconnected
yeah,
from
yeah,
source. But there's been this
but that's the
created
illusion, though.
disconnect.
That's
That's
the
the illusion.
illusion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, yes, for men, it has been a difficult and challenging time as they're coming into reconnection with their emotions and their emotional bodies. I also think conversely for women, it's been scary as well for like needing to stand in their independence or take
Mm-hmm.
back their power and make
Mm-hmm.
some changes in their life, that are healthy and beneficial. So, with both, if you want to say the sexes, with both of the sides of the coin here coming into, the balance of their other half, so to speak, whether it's masculine or feminine. I feel like, there is great changes going on. You were also, when you were talking a few minutes ago, I also had this flash of, oh, this is again brings up a whole, like a no, whole nother story, but this, what's happening, the crumbling and the things that are shifting and happening. Uh, it kind of reminds me of the bigger galactic story.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a bigger galactic story that's playing out here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which played out in Atlantean times as
Absolutely.
well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the bigger galactic story that we often hear about also is how we're definitely a part of it, and that we are trying to find our place again because we've been sort of lost for the longest time, and now, especially getting in contact again with the galactics, I think that we're going to be able to sort of find our place again, and to find, and also to know our own story, because I think there's also one of the things that's happening now, especially after 2012, is that we are having the wool pulled from our eyes. We're going to be able to see more of the real story of humanity and who we are. So I think that that's sort of coming along the pike. So we're here sort of talking about this whole sort of like macro and galactic aspect. Well, we'll bring it back down to earth.
Bring it back
As,
down to the personal,
yeah,
huh?
back to the personal. So we sort of got off on that tangent there.
We
But
sure did.
speaking of karma, in terms of, would you equate karma with the signs as well? Like, I mean, in terms of people's personal lives?
Can you ask me that in a different way? Because I'm
Yeah.
not
So
understanding.
how do are we also facing karma from a personal perspective in terms of what's happening now with Saturn? And what should we do about that?
Okay, sure. Again, based on your astrological chart and where Saturn is turning retrograde,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, there's the bigger picture and then the more personal picture. The bigger picture is that with Saturn being in Aries, the karma is about our sense of self because Aries rules the self, our independence, our individuality, our confidence, our courage. So, all the way around, we're dealing with some karmic lessons,
Mm-hmm.
everybody here, regarding confidence, courage, and individuality. The bigger picture is where in your chart is Saturn turning retrograde? And then also, where is your Saturn in your personal chart? Because that's really going to tell you what you come in with as a soul as far as your karmic lessons. Like, for instance, my Saturn is in the first house, and the first house is like the physical body, and it is about the self and our individuality. Um, and so my karma is all about self-confidence and self-worth. And, also with the physical body, I've had many through my life thus far, a lot of physical body things happening, and they don't always seem to be based in this 3D reality. But that's because even though Saturn rules this 3D reality, my Saturn is in Pisces, and Pisces rules past lives. So whenever I have a physical body thing that comes up, I don't know, a rash breaks out over here, a neck kink over here, whatever it might be, for me, it's a past life thing. So my karma is, um, it's about releasing past life, physical body hurts, ailments, traumas, and whatnot. That's how my Saturn plays out. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody has their own individual Saturn. What sign is it in? What house is it in? That's gonna, help you to understand what karma your soul chose to come in with and to work out in this lifetime. And then on top of that, your Saturn might be connected to other planets too, and that gives more of the story. So I hope, is that kind of what you were
Yeah,
asking?
pretty much. And I think that so it's not as simple as okay, well, if you have Saturn in the second house, like in your it's not as simple. I guess it's sort of like really about.
No, we can give some generalizations. Like if somebody had a question about that right now, we could give generalizations if if you
Mm-hmm.
know what sign and house your Saturn is in. But
Mm-hmm.
there's other, things to look at beyond that too.
Mm-hmm.
We could look at the fourth house with generational karma. We could look at the 12th house with past life karma. We could look at if your Saturn is connected to a bunch of other planets,
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a whole thing to look at there.
Okay, so if you have, for example, now that Saturn's moving into Aries, right? So if you have an
Yeah.
Aries rising and Saturn is there, it's transiting, what kind of challenges could you be looking at in that sense? Just as an example.
If you have Aries on the ascendant and Saturn is in Aries, I'd say it has to be close to the ascendant. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be like if your ascendant is at 25 degrees of Aries, but Saturn is only at 1 degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen, for a couple of years till Saturn gets closer. But with Saturn on the ascendant, it could cause fatigue and physical tiredness. It could cause a feeling of restriction and limitation as far as expressing yourself. It could cause skeletal structure things or physical body things or headaches or migraines because Aries rules the head. So those are some of the things
Mm-hmm.
that it could bring about.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what? If anybody has any questions out there that they want to ask, or basically like general questions, I think we got into a part now in the show where we can sort of maybe ask some questions. So if anybody has a quick question, that would be great. But in terms of and let's say here, so in terms of where we are at, we'll go back, sort of pull back out again and look at the planet. In terms of the planet, do we feel that we are going to be hopefully finding a little bit more peace with some of the changes coming up? Because as we were talking about, people are becoming a lot more aware and becoming a lot more aware of their emotional self. Do you feel that people are going to look towards more peace on the planet? Because right now, it's kind of crazy. Whereas like what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening in the Ukraine. And now we're starting to hear rumblings about happening in Bosnia. Oh my God! But where do we see ourselves going at this point?
I think it depends on an individual person's mindset, right?
Okay.
It's glass half full versus glass half empty.
Yeah.
If you're a glass half empty and a fearful person, and that's not to be a slam at all, because some of us have had traumatic upbringings and childhoods
Mm-hmm.
and situations in our lives, and it's taken the wind out of us. And so, if we're in more of that down place of fear or insecurity or anxiety, then some of the changes that we are witnessing, seeing, feeling, sensing on the planet might cause you definitely more concern. Other people that are in a different mindset and choose to look at things differently or are working on shifting their perspective, to see the potential of where we're heading as a humanity rather than what it appears to be, because our physical eyes sometimes delude us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this can be just an illusion that we're seeing when really there's something going on behind the scenes that's more of the true reality of getting us to where we really want to go, to that place of peace and harmony. But sometimes you have to go through the challenge to get to the peace and harmony. So that person that has a different perspective about that, all sure, they can maybe be involved in situations where they're seeing more peace and harmony and goodness in the world and people helping one another because their mindset is drawing those situations to them because of where their vibration is and where their mind is, and therefore they're able to stay there more and more. And meditation is a big tool too. Like we really need the self-reflection, the meditation, the visualization of being grounded and at the same time connected to universal source. Those are all tools that are going to help you to stay in that positive, peaceful, sort of mindset. Where do I think we're going? Again, free will. Like
Mm-hmm.
where are we going to go? It's kind of up to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we come together? Can we shift and allow ourselves to evolve and grow, and empower ourselves and be our own authority and set good boundaries, but yet be in a state of unconditional love and compassion and forgiveness for others. If we can, and we can, great many people can do that, it will domino effect, around the world. And then we'll be able to move into more peaceful times eventually, whenever divine timing,
Yeah.
kind of dictates that.
Exactly. And speaking of different groups and all that, a lot of people, especially for example, someone like Dolores Cannon, who I was very, I didn't have a chance to meet her, but Dolores Cannon is very, very influential for many people. And she also did a lot of past life regression. And she talked about how a lot of people are being born at this time. A lot of people are born to be here at this time to help with the planetary ascension. Do you feel that's the case? And do you feel that these new children that are coming in, very, very different, might help to take us over that edge? I mean, I know it's a weird sort of question, but I
I
feel
think
that,
they're
you
helping
know,
us. They're helping us to, because a lot of the children coming in right now, they are definitely more balanced in their masculine and feminine.
yeah.
In fact, some of them are so balanced they don't identify as either
Mm-hmm.
masculine or feminine, right? They're just a soul here expressing their creative love and their ideas out into the world. So, I think that there is a great surge of these new, wonderful, enlightened souls that are coming in. I feel like, some of us, like those that are my age and whatnot, it's like
Mm-hmm.
we were the forerunners and the light workers coming in, but
Yeah.
we had a lot of like karma stuff to kind of process and
Yeah.
and let go and release. I feel like some of these new souls, not all of them, but a lot of the new souls coming in are coming in without that karma,
Mm-hmm.
without that baggage, and they're just here to again, like you said, bring us to, towards the new vision.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question because I am a part of Gen X, and I feel that compared to, let's say, Boomers, Gen X got really the brunt of all this. What was it about Gen X that we had to go through all this mire, and it seems a lot of karma, and
Oh, your guess is as good as
oh
mine.
my
I don't
god.
know.
Because I know
I don't
that.
know. We are, we were the older souls, a lot of us that
Mhm.
lived on lived several lifetimes on Earth. And because we lived several lifetimes on Earth, we got caught in that cycle of karma. And so we came in, some of us maybe, to try to eliminate as much as we possibly could, in
Mhm.
this life before this time period came in. That's moving us to, a new way and a new world, so to speak. Whereas perhaps some of the new souls, and again, not all of them, but perhaps some of the newer souls, those children that are coming in, perhaps are, those that haven't been here caught in the cycle of karma.
Mhm.
Perhaps they're just fresh from whatever star system that they come from
Yeah, that's what
to
I've been hearing.
assist, yeah,
Yeah.
to assist us as we move forward.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? And I think that, getting back to what we were talking about before, in terms of how you can, use astrology as a blueprint. So when people say the word blueprint, we often have the idea of an actual blueprint where you can do certain things. Is there work that you can do in addition to astrology? With, say, for example, working with crystals or working with different types of modalities that can help you to shape how you want to, like, so let's say here you are, you're in your late 40s or 50s, and you're like, and I wanted to sort of put it out there, just because you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s doesn't mean that you cannot start off something new. Like, I mean, we and again, that's the patriarchal idea that you can't do anything unless you're 25. That's just not true. And so I think that this is an amazing time to be in your 50s, especially as a woman, but to be in your 50s and 60s and to say, you know what, okay, this is the kind of life that I've had before. I want to try something new. What can we do with astrology, or like I said, or maybe other modalities using crystals or different things to actually chart a new blueprint, to scrap this one and to chart a new blueprint? I know it's a bit of a heavy question, but if you wanted to sort of take a stab at it.
Well, First of all, before specifically answering that question, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
say that a lot of our metaphysical spiritual tools do work really well together.
Mm-hmm.
Astrology and numerology work very well together.
Mm-hmm.
The tarot and divination cards work very well with astrology and numerology. So we can, like, the more we learn of all these tools, of self-discovery, the more we can move forward in our path and shift kind of our trajectory
Mm-hmm.
or enhance certain gifts that we have. So that's kind of part of the answer is like
Yeah.
learning as much as you can enhance what you already have or what maybe lies a little dormant but is there to express at some point in time and be activated. But also another thing that pops into my mind is something that and I've been working on just very recently, and I haven't even said anything to you about this,
Yeah.
Chris, but I've been working on maybe doing this workshop come late fall
Mm-hmm.
about rewriting your story in the Akashic.
Oh.
And so, in rewriting your story in the Akashic records, we also could potentially like utilize the astrological
Mm-hmm.
blueprint. And like, what karma do you come in with? Is it about relationships? Is it about finances? Is it about health? What is it? And how can we rewrite kind of like, that astrological blueprint? I mean, that blueprint is yours, but it's how you're going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you're going to activate it, right? And the pearls of wisdom that you're going to pull from it. And so, rewriting your story in the Akashic records, so to speak, can also help to like I don't want to say redirect your soul's blueprint
Mm-hmm.
because that is your blueprint, but to awaken different facets of it maybe and allow it to
Mm-hmm.
utilize um, the energies in a more beneficial capacity, perhaps.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. You'd have to come back and do a present a
We'll see if
presentation.
I can get it put together for late this fall. If not, it'll be next year sometime.
Okay,
But
no problem, but we'll definitely have to look at that. And speaking of numerology, because that is a very, very powerful tool, the numerology goes from, let's say, 1 to 9, right? And
well, yes. I mean, the single digits go from 1 to 9, but
mhm.
there's master numbers, there's karmic
Mhm.
numbers, and then there's all the other double digit and triple digit and
Oh,
beyond.
okay.
So again, actually, that's interesting you bring that up because that is one of my courses that's starting. I can't remember if it's September. I think it's October.
Mhm.
October is when the numerology courses will start. But there's different ways to add up the letters in your name, add up your date of birth, or subtract different things in your date of birth, or whatever.
Mhm.
There's a
Mhm.
whole complete numerology chart that tells you very similar things as the astrology chart or the astrology blueprint does.
Mhm.
And so that's why they work so well together because the numerology can also talk about your gifts, your talents, your karma, your past lives, different cycles of your life, and when might be the best time to do this, that, or the other thing, or initiate something. So yeah, it's a very interesting science for sure.
Would we be able to just sort of do like a quick rundown, like similar to what you did with the wheel, like you say if you're born, and I'm not like you said, there's many
Sure.
different ways to sort of calculate, but if you know, you know, if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
one,
Let's
if you're
Let's do
two,
this.
okay,
All right. So this is the simple thing.
yeah,
So whether you want to use the phone on your calculator, your own mind, or a little piece of paper and a pen,
mm-hmm.
I want you to write down your date of birth. And when you write down your date of birth, use the number for the month. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
were born in December, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a 12.
Mm-hmm.
If you're born in October, it's a 10. Born in May, it's a 5. So you're going to write your month as a number form, your day of birth, and then your year of birth in full. So like if it's 1900 and something, you want to write 19,
71, whatever,
72 or whatever.
yeah,
So then I want you to add each digit all the way across together.
mm-hmm.
So you're adding your month digit, your day, and then the year digit, digit by digit. Like just, like I'm born October 8th, 1966, and
Mm-hmm.
October is the 10th month. So I'm going to add 1 plus 0 plus 8 plus 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 6 because that's my date of birth. So that's what I want you to do is add those numbers together. You're probably going to get a double digit. And when you get the double digit, because unless it's a master number or a karmic number, which we're not going to get into right now, we want to look at the single digit. So take the double digit and add those two digits together. Like if you came up with, I don't know, 35, add 3 plus 5 together at the end to get it down to a single digit. That is your life path number. That is the most important number in your numerology chart. And so life path 1, if you're a life path 1, you're a leader, you're an initiator, you're an entrepreneur, you're assertive, you're confident, you're courageous. If you're a 2 life path, you're a people person, you're a peacemaker, you're intuitive, you're all about harmony, equality, balance, and relationships and partnerships. If you're a life path 3, you're all about creative self-expression, teaching, speaking, writing, blogging, sharing information, learning new things. It's a very joyous, happy, expansive kind of energy. If you're a life path 4, you are someone who works to build a solid foundation. You're practical, you're determined, you're persistent. It's a little slower moving, but they are the builder. And in order to, sometimes things move more slowly. They have to have more patience. Sometimes they get frustrated and depressed and want to throw in the towel because things take too long. But you have to remember that if you're a 4, you're building a solid foundation so that whatever you do in life lasts a really long time. They're actually, I want to say they're really good with their hands too. Like we have working with wood, working in the dirt, things, paying attention to details is something they're really good at. If you're a life path 5, you are like the salesperson. You can sell anything to anybody. You're a networker. You are very social. You are probably good in business to some respect because, again, you can sell anything. You are multitasking. You probably have more than one career or more than one interest going on at the same time, and that's okay. Right? A lot of times people say, oh, you should focus on just one thing in your life, not for 5 people. 5 people should have lots of things that they're juggling because they get bored easily. If you're a 6 life path, you are the counselor, the empath, the intuitive guide, the mother, the nurturer, the caretaker, working with maybe women and children or families. If you are a life path 7, you are the wisdom keeper. You are very good at analysis. You're very good with, what do I want to say? Organizing things, reflecting on things, coming up with new solutions. It's a very spiritual number, but it's also very mental as well. So these people might be a little bit more silent, but they have this kind of inner wisdom to them. And I think they make good teachers and healers as well. Number 8 people, life path of an 8, you are, again, managerial, supervisory material, leaders, take charge, good in business, good at making money, good at, what do I want to say? Kind of, what's that word where you kind of disperse tasks to other people? Why can't I think of
that? You're like a good at. Oh, you're right.
what is that
word? You're good at. I just keep saying disseminating, but you're good at
passing off the task.
Yeah.
I know there's a word for it.
I know it starts with a D, but I can't remember. I can't. Oh my God, I'm so tired.
I don't know. Anyway, you're really good with money and finance and business. And then if you're a life path of a 9, you're an intuitive and you're an artist and you're a creative. Musicians often have a 9 energy, or again, people that are actors and actresses, they have a 9 energy, or people that are humanitarians, and there are a lot of times maybe social workers and people that are helping people that are less fortunate. Those people are the 9 people, very intuitive and psychic as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a little synopsis of the numerology life paths.
Wow, that is really incredible. And also numerology plays, I think, also into the year that we're in right now, right? Like numerology can also affect. So right now we're in 2025. Yeah. Do you want to sort of give us a little rundown on that one?
Yeah, so add up 20,000. Add up 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, you get 9. So we're in a nine energy, and this again goes along with the astrology very well because as we're in a nine energy, it's the last of the single digits. And because it's the last of the single digits, that means we as a humanity are in a time of completion, releasing, letting
Mm-hmm.
go. We're completing some sort of a cycle. And the planets, having just shifted into new signs of the zodiac, are saying the same thing. We're completing a new cycle so that we can start a new cycle.
Mm-hmm.
There's, several of these planets, like Uranus just went into Gemini July 7th, but it's going to revisit Taurus before the end of this year when it goes retrograde. Both Neptune and Saturn, that just went into Aries earlier this year, they are both going to revisit Pisces, the previous sign of the zodiac, later this year. So we're still finishing something up.
Yeah.
And that's what the nine universal years, what it's
Mm-hmm.
called, is all about for the collective. And then next year, 2026,
It's a
if you
one.
add that up, it's a 10, which is a one,
Yeah.
and that is our true new beginning. That's when all of these outer planets finally shift back into that sign that it's
Wow.
sort of in now, but it's not going to stay there,
Wow.
because of the retrograde motion, but it'll go back into their signs that they moved into for
Mm-hmm.
good, for the several years that they're going to be there.
Yeah.
So that's when our true new beginning is going to happen.
Yeah, and you know, if you look at the what you're talking about in terms of like things going retrograde and then starting up again, we're going into a 1 year. This is, I think, 2025 is an interesting year because there's a lot going on here as well. But I think, and from what I've heard, 2026 is going to just blow up, and
Yeah.
everything is just going to be like, so it's going to be we're gearing up. And that's sort of what I was saying before. I said, I feel like we're sort of like, we're sort of in a holding pattern. We're not sort of really kind of moving.
We're
We're kind of
still in the
stuck.
crumbling. We're still in the
Yeah.
crumbling phase.
Yeah. And I think that next year is supposed to be a very, very important year, especially with the galactics. I think that that's going to be the one that's the one. If everybody's listening to Chris Bledsoe, it seems that next March, Easter of 2026, there's supposed to be contact at that point. So we'll see how it goes. It's nothing written in stone, but we'll see how it goes. But it seems that if we're looking at the astrology, that it definitely is going to be, that's that blueprint right there,
Absolutely.
So this is really great. Did you have any other things that you want to talk about in terms of the courses that you have coming up that
Oh,
maybe people would be
yeah, I
interested in?
can I can briefly mention the general itinerary here.
Sure.
So, I kind of take more of a break during the summer because it's time for fun in the sun and vacations and whatnot. But starting, I think it's the very last week of August. If not, it's the very beginning of September. We're going to start the Psychic Clairs course. The Psychic Clairs course is about clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, and learning about those particular clairs. Which ones do you have? Which ones are you strongest in? How can you develop the other ones? And so we'll be doing that one in the fall. Also, starting in October, we're going to have, as I said, the numerology level 1, followed by level 2 and level 3. Learning all about your numerology blueprint. And then let's see, again, possibly that Akashic Records rewriting your story, maybe in November. And if not, then next year. But the astrology for self-discovery is going to start in January. So I think it's the third week in January is when the first level astrology course starts. And the first course, the first 8 2-hour classes, again, are learning all the basics. You're learning little snippets, keywords for the signs, for the houses, for the planets. You're learning what the astrological chart looks like, the angles, what they mean, hemispheres, quadrants, things like that. And you have to have that good basis and understanding. And then as we move into level 2, the next set of 8 2-hour classes, we're focused more on the houses of the zodiac and going deeper with that. The level 3 course, which comes after level 1 and 2, is going to be going deeper into the planets and what the planets are all about and how they affect us. And then level 4 is going more into what's called aspects, how the planets in your chart connect with the other planets in your chart and what that might mean for you. Like somebody might have, let's say, Mars and Venus square, and Venus and Mars are known as the lovers in astrology. Venus rules the feminine archetype, Mars rules the masculine archetype. They are both often connected to the relationships in our lives. If somebody has Venus and Mars challenging one another. They might have some challenges in their relationships that they chose to come in and work out and work through, for instance. So that's one way that the aspects can kind of um, be mapped out and understood. So that's a little bit about some of the upcoming courses. And again, if I can make mention that for your people that are here today or on your group, even if they, have access to the information, is I recently, for my meetup group, put out a discount code for 50% off of a 30-minute intuitive reading. So that's the biggest discount I've ever done in a really super long time. But I decided, hey, it's summertime, let's kind of put this out there.
Perfect.
And it's good until the end of August.
Okay.
So I think that you have that link for people, or
Yeah,
they
it's
can
down
access
it's
that
down
link.
below in the information. So
Okay.
just if you're here right now, you can just scroll down and look at the information. The link is right there. And also look on the meetup website as well under the Starseeds and Lightworkers Collective. You can find all that information as well. And we also have, Colleen, we also have your website as well. So if, they need to just contact you, you can just click on the website as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I do have a YouTube channel where I give free weekly and monthly intuitive readings for the collective. So,
Okay.
for those of you that maybe feel still like financially you can't take advantage of that discount coupon for a personal intuitive reading, please, by all means, go to my YouTube channel under Colleen Lemma and, watch the collective reading. And there's some nuggets of wisdom in there for you as well. Did we have any questions?
Actually, you know what? We have a lot more comments. I think people are sort of like commenting and sort of. I just realized that Kit Cloud Kicker, is born a year. Has got a 7, and he's also a Chinese pig. And I was like, oh, so am I. So it's interesting. I did have an interesting thing here about way back here about Angel Axos, and she was saying how I think she says that she's a born Libra Scorpio cusp, and that she doesn't get along with her mom who was a Pisces, but she says that she is a Sag Mars, and I'm thinking Mars and Sag and Pisces maybe don't always get along. I don't know. Did you want to do like a quick
Yeah,
comment on
so
that?
so the person that is submitting the okay, who has the Mars and Sag? Let's
Yeah,
just try to
that's Angel Axos.
Okay, she has the Mars and Sag, her mom's a Pisces.
Yeah.
Yes, Sagittarius and Pisces are two signs of the zodiac that aren't necessarily on the same page. Also, I think because you're on the cusp of Scorpio, Scorpios are very deep. Like Scorpios don't like superficiality. They don't like to, just kind of skim things or talk about nonsensical things to them, things that are not deep basically to them. And Pisces just might not be deep enough for a Scorpio. But the whole idea of Sagittarius being fire sign and being mutable and changeable, it's like especially with Mars being in Sagittarius, because Mars is our energy, action, and forward movement. So your energy is like very heightened and very what do I want to say? Expressive, very expressive, very creative, very kind of all over the place. And because Pisces is also a changeable sign, I feel like you're just not on the same page. Like I feel like there's, this mutable, ungrounded energy where you just can't like click together kind of thing. And, Sagittarius is very much the visionary and Pisces is very much very sensitive energetically. So they might, you might find that your mom as a Pisces is just much more sensitive maybe than you are, and that she feels as though maybe you hurt her feelings when that's not your intention whatsoever, right? Because Pisces just are very empathic and just sensitive to the energies of the environment around them. So I don't know if that
Yeah,
helps to answer your
that sounds
question.
pretty good. That sounds pretty good because I know that there's true. There's also communication issues. Like some signs communicate better than others, and those two signs probably don't communicate as well. But I just have one last question, and maybe it's more of a personal one.
Okay.
But with Saturn moving into Aries, and I have it's in my ascendant, so I think that's in my second house, right? And so
Your ascendant is your first house,
Your first
Cass.
house? Okay,
Hmm.
so but I have a Aries rising.
Okay, yeah. That's the same thing. Aries rising and
Okay,
Aries ascendant is the same kind of
first house.
terminology.
Okay,
A
so I'm
first
just sort
house.
of thinking a lot has been changing for me in terms of putting this podcast together, and a lot of things that are changing as well. I don't know. Do you think maybe this could maybe be a bit bigger because like I mean it seems to be sort of rolling on its own energy. I don't know. Just
Yeah, I think so. I would think one thing to make mention again, we never brought this term up for Saturn, but Saturn is the planet of structure and form. And so Saturn helps us to restructure. And so I feel like while Saturn is in Aries, whether it's retrograde or moving forward, you have an Aries ascendant, Crystal. I think Saturn being in Aries this next 2.5 years is going to help you to restructure a lot of things about what you're doing out in the world, but also personally, just in your everyday life as
yeah.
well. And it's also about restructuring your health too, because the ascendant can deal with the physical body and health. So, might need to restructure your, I don't know, your exercise routine or
Or
what you're
diet or
taking as supplements, right?
yeah.
Things like that. So look at that over the next, 2.5 years as well. But wherever Saturn is falling in a person's chart right now for the next 2.5 years being in Aries is going to be where they are restructuring their lives in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Like I have where Saturn is in Aries, it's in my second house, which is resources. And that includes money and finances because those are resources of ours. So I'm restructuring, I'm restructuring my finances, restructuring how I make money, how I spend money, how I look at money, what I think about money,
Yeah.
I'm restructuring all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And also Neptune is coming into Aries as well. So maybe that also explains why I mean I've always been into the esoteric, but it just seems that now it's just like it's all coming
Ah,
online for me. So I'm kind of like, "Oh, maybe that's what that is," you know?
yeah, going back to answering your original question, because Neptune is also there in Aries with Saturn.
yeah.
That gives it the kind of mind of its own.
Yeah.
That is like, okay, where Aries wants to direct, Aries is a very direct, let's go for it, let's do it, let's charge full steam ahead kind of sign. Neptune there with it says, no, you can try, but the universe is just going to guide it. The universe is just going to
Yeah.
lead you. You got to just surrender and have faith and trust, and it'll be what it is when it is. And
Exactly.
so when it comes to your business, part of it, yes, is going to be like, okay, I'm going to initiate this. I'm going to take charge over here. I'm going to do that. But you also have to balance that with surrender, trust, and faith, and just letting it go and
Exactly.
and become what it's going to become.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? That has been a very, very. I really like this presentation today. I don't know. It's true because like I mean, we've really been around the planet. We've been across the galaxy. We've talked about a lot of different things, and I think that people can get so much information from this. But I think also people, I would definitely strongly recommend everybody to contact Colleen to get a much more detailed and much more closer to your own chart as to what you can do. And like I said, don't feel intimidated by the fact that if you're in your 50s or your 60s or your 70s, you can still take part in some of the major changes that are coming on this planet. Because actually, I'm going to be honest with you, what I see happening, not only in terms of the technology, but and you tell me what you think about this, but I think that the idea of age altogether is going to completely change, because I think that the technology is going to change, especially starting next year. I think that the whole concept of the aging is going to be completely changed. And for those of you who, for example, saw, and because I like movies, I studied film, but if you saw like Logan's Run, with Michael York back in the 70s, in that whole society, that was so technologically advanced that people just were not aging at that after a certain point. And so I see that the technology and maybe even a connection with galactics is going to change human, how we age, but also in terms of bringing online our so-called junk DNA, which is just dormant DNA, but bringing all that DNA online is going to change our bodies so much that the way we look at aging, the way we look at life in general is going to change completely. So I don't know if how do you feel? I don't know if I'm going off on
Oh,
a tangent
I
here.
totally agree. I totally agree. I feel like, the downloads, the activations, the DNA coming back online, like you said. Um, Also, again, with supplements and herbalism and clean diet, organic foods, but also energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Energy healing, those different modalities that we talked about earlier, the energy enhancement system, Reiki, crystals, um, visualization during meditation, because you can, see what you want your body to morph into,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do inside your body, and you're creating that reality. So using all of these different alternative energy techniques, along with what we might deem as more practical,
Mm-hmm.
techniques, I definitely feel like, you know, anti-aging, like you
Yeah.
said, can definitely be a thing. I don't
Yeah.
think, and in a greater sense too, it doesn't matter what sign of the zodiac you are, what you do out in life, what your age is, what your culture is, what your social class is, what your education is. We're hopefully all moving into
Yeah.
a time where we are all one, because we are
Exactly.
all a part of the source. We are all
Exactly.
interconnected. We are all equal
Mm-hmm.
in the aspect of being a soul,
Absolutely.
right? And so what does all this other stuff matter?
Exactly. No, but that's a part of that whole crumbling. I think that's a part of that whole crumbling because we've been always sort of, slotted into boxes. Well, you're black or you're white or you're rich or you're poor or you're this or you're that. And if you're a woman over 30, you're no longer no, 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 no. That is completely crumbling. And that's a part of that whole sort of shift that's happening is that all those ideas and all those preconceived notions of what it means to be a human being, whether male or female or whatever, all that is crumbling. And while on the one hand, people sort of like, oh my God, what's going on? But that's a part of becoming, human galacticus is that we becoming a higher version of ourselves. And so those sorts of those, labels no longer apply. So I think that's sort of what I'm seeing and picking up from my own observations and everything. But again,
Absolutely.
huh? Sorry?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And just too, I want to say, with the younger generation coming in, maybe they have these new solutions and new ideas to
Mm-hmm.
implement that's going to help us. But remember, those of you that are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever,
Yeah.
however old you are, you're the wisdom keepers. You're here to teach the younger generation what you have as far as this inner wisdom from the years of experience that you've gone through. And
Yeah.
that's important too.
Absolutely. And I want to be that wisdom keeper that wants to teach, but I want to look 25 while I'm doing it.
Well, let's envision that, and then we'll
I
shift
know.
it. Shift our bodies.
Exactly. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Colleen, for being here with us. I really enjoyed our conversation today. It really, really gave us a very eclectic view and as well an insightful view of who we are as people and who we are as energetic souls on this planet. And I do believe, as Dolores Cannon points out, that a lot of us came and were born to be here at this time so that we could be a part of that change and help to usher in all that change. So I think we need to everybody needs to pat themselves on the back and needs to sort of say thank you for being here because we are all learning. And I definitely feel that moving towards the end of this year, especially next year, we are going to be moving as a one big clump collective. We're all individuals, but we're all in it together. So I think that next year we should definitely get back together and talk about, because I think it's going to be some rock and roll next year. So
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
think I'm seeing you later on this year for
yeah,
another
we are.
presentation, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, but I definitely want to put you out there, if not for this year, for next year, for the understanding or changing your
Rewriting your
rewriting your
soul
exactly.
Akashic records.
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
exactly.
I better get on that
Yeah,
then.
exactly. Anyway,
Thank you so much, Crystal. This
yeah,
has been this has been my pleasure. Thank you so much to you and your audience. I really enjoyed being here today.
perfect. And I wanted to say again, everybody, please scroll down to the comments I've listed all of Colleen's information. Definitely contact her for that special. There's a 50% off, I think, right? Yeah, for the
Until the end of August.
yeah, to the end of August for that 30-minute reading. I definitely am going to check that out. And get in contact with Colleen if you have any other questions. And you can see by her background that she'll probably be able to help you with so much more than just like the average astrologer. She has a lot more gifts and talents, and she can help you to really crystallize everything what you want to know about. And I think it's important, especially now, because we are going into such a different dynamic and a different energy. Now is really the time to contact her because you want to be ready. You want to get yourself ready for that big explosion. So definitely contact Colleen. Her information's below. And as always, people, if you like the content that we're bringing you, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and it helps us to bring more of this incredible content like we have with Colleen here to you. And it really, really helps us to move forward. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and also check out Colleen's channel as well. Colleen, what is the name of your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is just Colleen Lemma. So you
Okay.
can just find me under Colleen Lemma. And my meetup group is Sacred Soul Empowerment if they want to check out that
Perfect.
that meetup as
Perfect.
well.
Yeah. So definitely check those out. And we'll be seeing you again next week, guys. Thank you for joining us for this special weekend edition with Colleen Lemma. I truly appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week on Wednesday for our usual scheduled program. So thank you. Thank you, Colleen. Have a wonderful
you.
day, and we'll see you back in the fall. I think I can't remember where we're seeing you.
Sometime in the fall. I don't
I know,
remember
like
when.
October or something like that, or something like that. Yeah,
Something like that.
we're saying that. Yeah, and then we'll be seeing you again. So thanks again, everybody, for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.